the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. Call the roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Bond.
All right, we have a quorum this evening, so we'll go ahead and move on to public participation. The first item is the public comments, 2-minute opportunity for any member of the public to address the board. I will give all 5 of you the opportunity if you'd like. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I'll just
Yeah,
start.
go ahead. There's a button on there, it should work.
My name is Walter Washington. I live in the Fairfield Way subdivision, just west of the police department, and right off of 30. And so, as of 3 weeks ago, I was given a ticket for parking in front of my house, my work truck, because of a crosswalk that's there. We're in a cul-de-sac. So, I reached out to my attorney about it, but it was a conflict of interest for him to represent me on this because he represents the Village of Montgomery. Cammett Johnson is the firm, and so basically he advised me to come talk to you guys about it to try to see if we could figure out a long-term solution for the fact that we have multiple vehicles, and in this case where I have pictures of the car, can I send these around the room to them? But basically I talked to the village, police department about it, the Sergeant Palka, that she saw my point, she looked at it, she said maybe it was something we could do long-term by addressing it to the village. But if I don't park there where I have work truck equipment, valuables and things, I'm a business owner registered here in the Village of Montgomery as well for my construction company. But my neighbor next door is gonna, where they've got 8 cars or so, they're gonna park there, or, you know, or whoever else. And so my point is I'm just trying to figure out, you know, I shovel the driveway there, I cut the grass, I maintain the property, and I pay the taxes. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's something to where if we could figure out some type of long-term resolution, so I don't have to continue to pay $25 parking tickets every other week for parking in front of my house. And I would have hate for that to have happened to one of my guests for just visiting when, you know, it's a perfectly open parking space that's right there. So I just wanted to see how we could maybe come to, you know, some type of long-term or situation where if I could get a permit or something, instead of me basically having to pay $50 to be able to park in front of my house, because it looked like I'd average about 2 tickets. And this we've been there 2 years. Whoever complained anonymous, the sergeant told me that handled, Sergeant Palka was her name, at the Montgomery Village Police Department. She said that what we're guessing is, I talked to all my neighbors. We all have very good relationships. It's someone that was walking through, maybe with the dog. There's a couple people that walk, but because we are the last block on the street, it's probably someone that was walking through that decided they didn't want to go around the cul-de-sac or walk straight or across into the driveway. But I just thought it was kind of petty to, and even when I first got the ticket, they put like a 24-hour, as if the car was abandoned, when I have service-disabled veteran plates right on my vehicle where they could have rang the bell. And the sergeant said, you know what, that's on us. We could probably give some more training about that. But instead of just, you know, putting an orange sticker, and I move the car every daily for work, but if whoever's coming through at 6 in the evening and they see it parked there again, then, you know, it's just, I park in front of my house. So I just wanted to address that. I brought pictures of the parking space. And again, like I said, I maintain the premises. I remove that snow that's there in the winter. I cut that grass all along there, and I pay my taxes there. So, you know, I should be able to park in front of my house, you know, if I have work trucks with equipment and things of that nature that happen to be there. That's pretty much that.
May I ask just a quick question based on the pictures you sent around? Is it the two pickups that you
Correct.
showed? So those are the ones that are parked there each evening?
Correct.
And then you do not have any room in your driveway because of other vehicles?
We've got multiple vehicles, yeah.
Okay.
It's a 2-car garage. Now, I did put pictures of the other intersection of the court where the cul-de-sac comes around. Whoever designed that layout, that's not in front of anyone's house. That's literally between the 2 houses that are there. So, you know, they don't have an issue with that. But for whatever, you know, the biggest point, I can see if, like, even if the kids were crossing where the kids cross for the bus, but they do catch the bus across the street in the morning. Like I said, my neighbors and I, we all talk. No one's had an issue. I've been there for almost 2 years in September. and all of a sudden, coming into June, out of June into July, where I first was written a ticket for it. Like I said, I addressed it right away. Sergeant was very helpful at the police department that helped me out with it, but she did say it was an anonymous complaint, which after that, I pretty much talked to everyone that walked through, because you know who lives on the block, all right? We all know each other. So literally, the couple people that do come walking through, I talked to them, and then there's a younger set of kids that just kind of moved in that's renting on the next block. They've been coming through. We think it may be them, but like she told me, it was an anonymous complaint, and they did it twice. So other than that, I've had other work, I've had vehicles parked there as long as I've been there, and it's never been an issue. So.
I have a question, if I may. Based upon the pictures that I saw, obviously, we can't let you park in front of where a sidewalk entrance is for ADA purposes and stuff, because if someone comes through in a wheelchair, they've got to be able to get up there. But on the pictures that you've taken, I believe you've got, what, 2 vehicles? Like a utility body vehicle and also a pickup truck?
Correct.
In one of the pictures, across the street from your house, it's what, a cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Can you park the pickup in the cul-de-sac area?
There is parking where some people park in the cul-de-sac there. My biggest concern is, so I've got my equipment in my truck, and not that we've got huge crime or anything going on, but looking out my window where I don't have a tree blocking my view, I can see directly down at both of my vehicles there. Again, to the left of us, that neighbor where I kind of talked, we worked it out, they've got a couple spots in front of their house, because it was almost like we were always fighting for parking. They got plenty of cars. Anytime I come home, we've got multiple vehicles as well. It's like, why can't you guys park in front of your house? You got 2 open spots here, and you guys continue. I got a work truck, so once we kind of communicated about it, we worked that out, but they've got multiple cars parked in the cul-de-sac, so unless I'm either kind of in the middle of it going around or on the other end, that's normally taken at night, because you've got other families that have multiple vehicles from various owners inside of the residence.
I don't know, and I would defer to the chief on this, I don't know what the requirement is as far as that opening, how wide on either side, or, like on a fire hydrant, I believe it's 15 feet either side. If you moved your vehicle, 10 feet, if you spread them apart 10 feet or whatever, is that a possibility?
So, if you, I don't know if that really caught but where the 2
Oh, the
trucks are
driveway,
at,
okay.
that's what you have. So, again, the traffic that is on our street are the people that live there. The kids, my kids play with all the kids there. Again, all the neighbors that, when it comes to, even with the school being in session, where our kids catch the bus across the street right there. Like I said, no one that lives on the block, we don't have wheels. I mean, I hear the if, it's a biggest word in the dictionary, if someone had to access it with a wheelchair. But I'm just saying, on a day in and day out basis, the people that live there, that cross the street or walk down the block or whatever, it's never bothered anybody. I talked to every single one of my neighbors after I got the tickets, and it was like, hey, and everyone's like, it's kind of petty. But again, I did hear that with the previous owners, he had his father-in-law or someone living with him, and he caught a ticket like once. But like I said, not trying to be in, as far as whatever the law is or whatever but the thing is, it's like I was telling the sergeant, I said, okay, so I'm gonna get a ticket if, I gotta move a car and we're in a hurry or whatever, and I'm parked there or whatever. It's like basically now I'm paying for a parking spot, because I'll have to pay a ticket every $25 every 2 weeks or as much, till the village gets tired of riding them. Because there's some days that I'm just gonna park there. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Just a couple of questions that I had. Do you, obviously your driveway is taken? You can't park these on your property?
I have 7 vehicles.
Okay,
I've got 4 personal, 3 work vehicles.
okay. Because this board can't, give you an exception and grant you access to park in an ADA, accessible route. That's something that just can't happen. It's against
ADA mean, I'm sorry, not to cut you off.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay.
So that's a crosswalk, it's against a lot of park there. I don't think we really have the authority to bend that rule at all.
Okay.
I do appreciate you bringing it to our attention, if there's anything that we can do from a police or public works standpoint, but I don't think You know, also on top of that, we can't grant an exception for one homeowner. I hear the concern that you have. My neighbor has 2 work vehicles that he has to park outside of his house as well, but I just don't see any scenario where we can, you know, where we're going to move the crosswalk or turn a blind eye to that, because then that would open us up to some legal ramifications there.
I have a follow-up question. You said you're running the business, this is residential, correct?
Correct.
And you have 3 work vehicles that this is the reason that we don't allow businesses in residential areas is exactly this reason, the parking problem. We have another resident that he was running a medical business. He had 8 vehicles parked in front of his house before the police started ticketing him. That's why businesses have businesses with parking lots, so that you're not tying up the residential neighborhood with commercial vehicles. You have 3 work vehicles. I'm guessing all 3 of those employees don't live in your home.
No, so, home-based business operations, okay? So, when I go out in the field, I typically, one of my trucks, I may have someone foreman or someone driving. The other truck I typically use if I'm running material or supplies or whatever from a job. Until I go into the office space that we're looking at leasing top of the year, and, I mean, like I said, the space in front of my house is where I park. 2 of the trucks, the other truck I keep at a shop. So I guess my point is that it's almost like you guys, well, not you guys, but with the way that design is, it's basically saying, oh, yep, you got a house here, but no one can ever park in front of your house, because this is just how we.
It happens throughout the whole village. There are areas like that. It's not you have a house and you get a parking spot in front of it. I had a friend who we just moved the no parking, no standing because of the crosswalk for line of sights. He no longer has any parking in front of his house because it's 30 feet now that he can no longer park in, because we needed to open up for safety purposes around that crosswalk. So again, I empathize, you're running a business in a residential neighborhood and trying to get commercial parking privileges on a residential street.
Why is that commercial? I'm sorry. Why are you calling it commercial parking?
Well, it's not your personal vehicle, it's a work vehicle, right?
The pickup truck is a personal vehicle. The one truck is a work vehicle.
And you said you had 3 work
Yeah,
vehicles.
So, again, one work truck is not in front of my home. The other work truck, that's the utility truck, that one is when I'm driving. My pickup is just my personal pickup. I mean, I use it for, you know, hauling or whatever. It's a pickup. It's a Chevy Silverado. Anybody in this room can drive that, and you're gonna have regular insurance and everything else.
Yeah,
It's not-
and
that's
and
not
again,
a
there's
vehicle.
7 vehicles in a home that is designed to probably have 3, maybe 4 vehicles, 2-car garage with 2 spots in the driveway. Typically, they're not really designed, the neighborhoods aren't designed to have 7 vehicles in one house. That's where the problem lies. Could you park the personal vehicles, like the regular vehicles, in the cul-de-sac area? Because there's not equipment in them?
You can't park in the cul-de-sac. Again,
But there's not equipment in those. You could put your equipment in your driveway.
right.
You know, that would solve your
That sounds like a
concern of
solution,
security. You know, that would solve your security concerns, put those in your driveway and park the, I don't know, the Firebird or whatever across the street in the cul-de-sac, or, you know, one of the vehicles that doesn't have the equipment in it.
Right. Like I said, I guess long-term, and I mean, we probably will end up pretty soon moving into a bigger house, and, I mean, we've been there a couple of years, but I guess the biggest thing is just like, again, in so many words, and that's why I really want to talk to attorney about it, because whatever loophole, whatever it is, whatever the law is, I'll let them do their job on that and figuring that out, but I just didn't, it's like, there will be no parking there at all, and that's something to where, if that's the case, and that's what you guys are gonna enforce, then, you know, we'll look at it and see if there's some other way to maybe, I don't know, like, I don't know what the law is, but I'll let someone do their job on that. But my point is, it's just like, even if I have a guest, it's like, I gotta be like, oh, you guys can't park in front of my house, you gotta park down the street or take a walk or something. It's just kinda like, I mean, I don't think that's our fault, the design of the subdivision was.
I have a fire hydrant in front of my house, which
Yeah.
means I don't have parking for 30 feet. But I somehow, and I have 4 vehicles and only 2 licensed drivers. So I managed to put 2 vehicles in my garage and 2 vehicles in my driveway.
So one thing is, hopefully you got your contact information down there. You know, we'll have our Public Works and police look at it. If there's any way that the designated crossing can shift, you know, there might be a cost associated with that. That wouldn't be, I don't think that would be something we would be in a position to fund. But we can look to see if anything can be changed there. I do appreciate you coming to the meeting and sharing the concern, but if the chief and public works director will reach out so you can chat on that. Trying to see what we can do to accommodate, but also realize that it's a federal law that we can't bend on. It's not a policy decision of these people in this room.
Okay,
Awesome.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, is there anybody else for public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item B, which is at this point, I would open the public hearing for the amendment to the Balmorhea annexation agreement and turn it over to the petitioner.
Good evening.
Good evening. Is the green light on there?
It is.
Okay. Dale, could you turn that up just a little bit? Okay.
All right, good evening. My name is Scott Shelton. I'm with Ryan Holmes, NVR's parent company. I'm excited to be here tonight, interested to talk to you about Balmorhea. NVR is the contract purchaser for the community, all the vacant lots currently within Balmorhea. And I'm going to walk you through a brief presentation on our intentions this evening. I'll try to keep it brief for you. But I do want to let you know that prior to coming here tonight, we had a invitation to all the residents in the community. We did invite them and had a really good attendance. Probably had 40 or 30 plus families represented and held that over at the police hall. And really had great feedback and welcoming. We shared this presentation that I'll share with you tonight, also with the residents. Had the opportunity to do a lot of Q&A. We're probably there for an hour talking about our plans. I think, I know some of you talked to some of them. I think they're excited to see a builder in the community and hopefully see the community complete. And I know we're certainly excited to be there, so I think we've gotten off to a good start with them. So real briefly, Ryan Homes, we're a public home builder, publicly traded, 4th largest builder in the country. Revenues of about $6 billion. We build about 16,000 houses a year and build in 24 markets across the country, really from Chicago east. And we currently have 7 active communities across the greater Chicagoland area. And as you can see, Gilbert's, Joliet, 2 nearby in Yorkville, Des Plaines, Hampshire, Elburn. We've also built in a lot of other villages and communities that we've completed since our tenure here. We came to the Chicagoland market in 2010 and have closed out several other communities. Oh, okay. How's that?
Same.
Is that better? No?
No.
Maybe I'll just yell. How about that?
That's all right.
If you can't hear me, stop me. So we have built a range of single-family product, detached, all price points, age-targeted homes, and townhome products across the greater Chicagoland market. And so I think we have good experience in building a breadth of product. And we do, as we mentioned to the residents, feel like we have a good handle on the local market, as we're currently building in 2 communities in the Yorkville area, one in, just down the street in Grand Reserve, which is an empty nester age-targeted community, and also one in Caledonia, which is our single-family, Simply Ryan single-family detached community. It is our intention to be the builder of all of the single-family and townhome products, so all the vacant lots in Balmorhea. We are also under a separate, or under the same contract for the lots in Saratoga, although that's not really our emphasis here tonight, but that would also close out the 11 lots that remain within the Saratoga Springs community as well. And we would hope to have a single-family model start this fall as we close on the transaction, and then open for sales after model completion in the early part of 2019. The townhomes timing a little bit later, just given some of the still the valuations in the market regarding attached product, and we understand we'd ultimately be back in front of you regarding any product approval regarding the townhome community as part of the annexation agreement. We have product ranging from just over 1,400 square feet to 3,300 plus square feet. Average sales prices we would expect in the mid 200s up to 320s. And then we're hoping to have a sales space at least in the 30 to 40 a year. There's 152 lots, single-family detached lots in Balmorhea, and another 150 single-family lots, another 52 townhomes. So part of the reason you'll see that we have two product series here is so that we're not building out here for the next 8 to 10 years, and we can try to complete the subdivision in a timely manner. Here's a quick map for you to show the highlighted lots. Obviously, the lots that we would be purchasing, those are the vacant lots that are available within the community, and those there at the bottom, of course, are the townhomes.
Do you know what the average lot size is for those out there?
The villa lots, so if you want to flip back one, if you don't mind, please. I believe there's 17 villa lots, so those are really on the right or the western, eastern portion of the community. Those, I believe, are roughly 6,500 square feet. The balance of the lots are closer to probably 8,000 to 8,500 square feet.
So typical for West Side, okay.
So as I mentioned earlier, we have two product series that we're seeking approval upon, and ultimately to get multiple absorptions going into the community and to build the community out as quickly as possible and serve the market. And the first is the Simply Ryan series. These products range from 1440 to 2203, have different various elevations, and what I'm going to show you here tonight is a sample of some of the elevations, and rather than keep you here for all of the various elevations for all the products, but we did submit all of those to staff. We currently offer this product in Caledonia. If you've not had the chance to go to the community, we'd welcome you to go there to see this product. It's just down the road. And we're also just opened up this past weekend in a community in Hampshire. And we expect these to be sold on approximately half the home sites. So I'll quickly run through here as an example of the 1440. Next would be the 1680. Next would be the 1918, and then the 2203. So the 1440 is a 3-bedroom house. The 1680 and 1918 are 4-bedroom homes, and the 2203 is a 5-bedroom home.
I'm assuming it goes by square footage?
Yes. Really creative, right? So here's an example of the streetscape, and again, it's probably best you can see the actual homes, if you have so desire, in Caledonia as well. The second
Quick
product
question, if I
series-
might.
Yes.
This is something the board discussed recently. Are these homes going to have mailboxes that come with them?
Yes. The ordinance in Balmorhea requires a certain mailbox, and so it's our intention to match as closely as possible existing.
Staff, is it a plastic mailbox?
I don't know what kind of mailbox it is.
Can we check into that so we don't have the same issues that we just dealt
Sure.
with, please? Thank you.
Has there been a concern in another location? or-
Snowplows and snow removal with the plastic boxes, they seem to damage quite easily. So we would prefer a wooden post type of mailbox. And so if there's a plastic or something that is other than that, we'll probably be willing to change it for you.
Okay. And then the second series is what we call internally the Renaissance series. These square footages range from just a little over 1,800 square feet to 3,600 square feet, multiple elevations per home. This series was completely refreshed and redesigned, and so we're rolling it out across our entire company now. So if you look on our website, you probably will struggle to see the names of some of these because they're brand new. But we are building them across the country, and we are building a new model in the Conservancy, which is up in Gilbert's, and also in Silverleaf as well. These are expected to be on approximately the other half of the home sites. We have indicated that we would not intermix the two product lines. In other words, we won't build a 1918 next to an Allegheny and then a 2203. They're meant to be segregated. Is how we intend to do that, and this would be the initial series model offered in the community. So here are some of the examples of these. The Allegheny, this is the 1823, the Ballinger. These are in roughly 300 square foot increments as they go up. The Columbia, Hudson, Lehigh, and York as the largest.
Are-
And
Are these a
they're-
higher price point?
I'm sorry?
Are these models a little bit higher price point than the other ones?
So these, one, be slightly higher price point. What we also do is there are additional upgrades, significantly more additional internal upgrades offered for these homes. For example, there's rear porches and things of that nature, which, you know, depending on what the customer chooses, might drive option selections up $20,000 to $30,000. So these will typically be in that 30,000 maybe on average relative to each square footage increment higher than the other product.
Okay.
So, as a brief overview, again, multiple elevations. It's not our intention to alter the monotony code that's currently in the annexation agreement. We're not expecting any changes to the homeowner's documents. We're expecting to meet the landscaping requirements that are currently outlined in the annexation agreement as well. So the annexation agreement was very specific to Saratoga Homes product. You know, so our intention is really just to swap the product out and then continue to build through the community as it was originally designed. We are strictly focused on the residential component, not any of the commercial piece that was part of the original annexation. So again, we're excited about it. We would hope to be closing on the transaction, you know, later this fall and under construction from there. And so with that, I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome.
I
Thank
have
you.
another question. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, can you go back to the site map? And then my question for you is, do you have a designation of where the two different product lines will be?
Yeah, what we've indicated to the residents is that our intention would be, if we had a pointer, I could, thank you.
Do we?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This one, right one? Okay, thank you. Oh, all right. There's a bike path right here. This is currently constructed, and there's a component of it that needs to be ultimately installed along here. But we looked at that as a bifurcation of the community, and there are, I believe, 79 home sites on this side and 71 on this side, so it's roughly half and half. And we had indicated to the residents that our intention was to build the Renaissance product on their half of the community where the existing residents are, and then the Simply Ryan on this side of the community.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's a playground or a park area. Is it identifiable in this particular drawing?
Yeah, the park is here.
Okay. Is it?
It's installed.
It's fully completed.
It's fully developed?
Yeah, and it's a Fox Valley Park District park.
Okay. Good.
Forgive me if I missed it, but which offering, the numbered homes or the named homes, will be available over at Saratoga?
The named homes.
Okay. Is there a significant price difference between the numbered homes and the named homes?
Yeah, I would say on average, we would expect the numbered homes would be somewhere in the 250, 260 range, whereas we'll probably stretch up into the low threes, you know, again, depending on what the buyer might purchase for the Renaissance homes.
Any other questions from the board? I guess the public hearing is open, so if there's any comments from the public, I know there's none here, but,
These two are with me, so.
yeah, I figured that. I figured as much, so just wanted to give them the opportunity. Okay, staff have anything else? I know we canceled our next meeting, and so,
We've canceled our next meeting, so the opportunity for this developer to move forward is pretty much limited to August, as I understand it, with your contract. So it would be helpful if we could waive reading of first ordinance and passage on second at your, I don't remember the date now, but the fourth
and,
Monday of August,
yeah,
fourth
Okay.
Monday of August. So from staff's review of the elevations to report to the board, we feel that it's important to look at the annexation agreement as it stands now and see if there's comparable product, and that's primarily from an elevation standpoint, materials and elevation. So there were 3 comments that we had on the review of the Simply Ryan series. where the existing homes in Belmarais included overhangs on both sides and at least one window on every elevation or every side of a house, which has been a longstanding requirement in relatively new annexation agreements for the village for a number of years. And they've indicated that they can comply with both of those additions to their set of plans. The third item was an element over the garage, and if we can go back maybe to the beginning series. The homes that are out in Belmarais and a part of the exhibits for the annexation agreement for Belmarais include at least some type of a roof element over the garage. They're slightly different plans, obviously, but there's more of an emphasis on second-story structures or portions of the structure above the garage. So if you look at the Belmarais, you might have a offset garage, let's say, from the principal structure of a two-story home. And so they're not exact matches, but the architectural element is missing from the plane, if you will, of the front of the house. And we just want to point that out to the board. That is a slight difference to the overall plans and what the overall streetscape, frankly, would look like. And if the board's fine with that, that's perfectly fine. We just wanted to point that out, that that's a slight deviation from what was in the original annexation agreement attachments for the original Belmarais homes.
Awesome. And is this something that, I guess, what, in the other subdivisions in town that have annexation agreements, was that requirement in those as well?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
So it's kind of a mixed bag. For instance, the Kennedy homes that you saw in Fairfield Way and Foxmore, I guess it's just Fairfield Way, they had more of this type of a front elevation. So I would say it's a mixed bag over the, past 15 to 20 years of annexation agreements. Some required it, some didn't.
Okay.
Does Balmarais subdivision, any homes in there, does it come with the landscape package? What I found is that homes that don't have any sort of landscape package, a lot of homeowners are pretty,
Landscapingly challenged is the word we use at our
that I
house.
think is a nice word coming from someone who's got a horticulture degree. They don't know anything about landscape, and so they may not do anything, and so it continues to look very plain. And there are homes in our subdivision in Orchard Prairie North that they haven't had any landscaping, and they've been in for 10 or 11 years. So is there any sort of landscape package?
No, there is no landscape package required in the Belmarais that I'm aware of in the annexation agreement. I believe it's strictly what the village would require in terms of parkway trees, and I might be wrong about this, but sod in the front and maybe seed in the rear, or it might be a completely sodded lot. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah, there's, our interpretation of the annexation agreement, there was a section in there that indicated about what the landscaping, Rich is right, about sod in front, parkway trees. There was like an ABC selection of, you need to do X, I don't have it memorized, but X number of bushes here, or certain type of ornamental trees. So,
Yeah.
it was our intention now to follow that. So it did have a requirement.
For the individual homes, and they're,
For each
okay.
individual lot.
So we can follow up with that concern and highlight that in the notes for the board.
Please.
I was really concerned about the flat facade above the garage on several of these, and I could see where the roofing could cause costs to become much higher. But I'm thinking of some of those, the $20 circle that's above my garage would break it up a little bit. And I'm a little bit less concerned now that I've seen the site plan where you're splitting them. And the Belmarais home that's built there, I think there's actually only one lot that's, you're not purchasing in the back section there. I think there was one lot, 146. There's one that's not highlighted. I actually want to go out there and see whose house is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you can see
Yeah.
There's one.
in the far southwest corner, there's one lot.
And I was thinking along the same line, that the majority would be the new homes now, that you would only have the one that's going to have that architectural detail, versus what they're proposing. So I don't think it's going to stand out.
And this is very similar to when Lakewood Creek was built, they had classic homes, and then they had executive homes, and same type of thing, that there was a few lots that had classic homes in the executive section just because of lot sizes. But other than that, they kind of segregated the two products so that they weren't next to each other. So I like that. So I'm a little bit less concerned about that architectural element, but something above there to break it up as opposed to 6 feet of siding might. And that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's comforting to know, or at least hear from staff, that this is a type of elevation that we would have approved elsewhere in our community. This isn't, when was the annexation agreement approved? Probably,
Early 2000s, I believe.
so, we're 10 years after the crash. I think it's a different world than we were in before. I think, I speak for every resident in Balmorhea, they would be very excited to have this subdivision built out and be, and feel more inclusive in our village. So I think while the architectural element above the garage looks nicer, obviously, I guess I wouldn't want to shoot down the deal for that, because I think it's still a good elevation and a good home for people to move into.
Basements available in these homes as well?
Yes, these, the number series, it's a partial basement, but no slabs.
Okay.
Unless we come across a soil condition that would inhibit a basement, but we haven't found that yet.
Any other questions for the petitioner or staff on this? I know we do have two board members absent from this meeting. I'd still like to have this as waiver of first, passage on the second. We don't have to take action on it, but at this point, I think because we canceled a meeting or two, it'd be nice to move the process along for them. So we'll proceed in that manner. If there's any other comments, bring them up to staff so the petitioner can be aware, but it sounds like generally excited to have, 200 units built over. I know it'll take some time, but I've had plenty of meetings out in Balmorhea where they just feel disconnected from the whole community. They're in a deserted subdivision that has been sitting that way for 10 years. So I appreciate you guys coming tonight, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Great, thank you, appreciate the support.
All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing and move on to approve some proclamations. I'm going to save some time tonight. The first proclamation we have is designating National Night Out, as we do every year, and thank you all for wearing your beautiful T-shirts this evening. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
First, please.
There's somebody
Your
over there.
pick.
Motion to approve.
Either one of us.
Okay.
Take your pick.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Moving on, we have the proclamation for Suicide Awareness Month in September. Motion to approve.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second.
Go ahead.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Thank you. The third one we have is a proclamation for Arbor Day celebration. Would like to thank our Director of Public Works for spearheading this and really, identifying that we are not currently signed up for this program and haven't been forever.
Well, it's just one phase in the recognition for
Mm-hmm.
USA. As part of that, all documentation that needs to be submitted is one of the things that need to be included in, so we're, we were a little late, we did it in April, but, it doesn't make a difference when, so we're gonna do it now, and get an application approved, and come through USA for the first year.
Is your green light on?
Director, yeah, you need to push that closer. I can barely hear you.
No.
No.
Push to, no?
Oh, the
I
button's
can
on.
see it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
It's part of a prank that we do so that we can't hear anything you say. Apologize for that. But I know that our very own Lorax here is very excited about this. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Oh, you didn't even
Second.
let him do that. He's been waiting for this for years.
Jeez. The reason I ran for election.
Go ahead, call roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
And Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
You guys are too slow on that one.
He was soaking it in. Okay, the last one is proclamation for Speed Awareness Day, which hopefully includes a plan to reduce the speeding, not just be aware of how fast you're going. But with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved?
Second.
All right,
To abstain?
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak.
Yes, reluctantly.
all right, thank you. Thank you all. All right, move on. We have the consent agenda. Read the items, entertain a motion for approval. We have minutes of the village board meeting of July 9th, accounts payable through July 19th, cancellation of the village board meeting on August 13th, and then also cancellation of our August 21st committee of the whole meeting. Appointment of John Amen to HPC, or reappointment, rather, through May 31st of 2021, and then appointments to the beautification committee through 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
All right, and that carries 5-0, thank you, 4-0. All right, items for separate action this evening. The first item is ordinance 1817, amending the village code regarding water regulation in and out of the village. This is first reading, so we're not taking a vote on this evening. About that, who would like to kick it off?
Go for it.
Thank you.
I don't think any of those are working, so I'll just talk a little bit louder. In front of the board tonight is a couple of different items in regards to water regulation. One is the connection fee.
Well, that one didn't work either, so.
What about the wireless one?
It's a funny trick to play on the press. I can't hear anything. Does this thing work?
Nope.
Okay.
Or what about the wireless one?
So I have the, oh, there you go. Okay, perfect.
Apparently Rich's is working. So as President Brawley stated, this is the first reading. There is no action expected from the board tonight. There are a couple of different items included in the ordinance. One is the connection fee that was presented at the last 2 meetings ago when the presentation was done by Michelle from EEI. That would increase the connection fee from $1,026 per PE population equivalent to $1,453 per population equivalent, depending upon the size, the number of bedrooms and so forth, the type of house. That's what's going to determine the number of population equivalents. The next item would be increasing the water usage rate. We are currently at 3% per year. And so there were 5 different options presented to the board. Pete actually is going to go through those again. We included the 5.5%. That doesn't mean that's what needs to go forward, just to clarify.
Can I go back? Can I go back? I apologize. I didn't interrupt you quickly enough. For those connection fees that we're talking about, how does that work with the apartments coming, this Ryan Homes proposal? Are those folks impacted by these new tap-on fees? Or they go by annexation agreements or when properties were purchased? How does that work?
Well, I'll add to that question because I know that in post-recession, we had decreased or eliminated some tap-on fees to help spur development. We're not still in a situation either at Saratoga or Balmorhea with that, are we?
Well,
What we have is what you approved, and I don't remember exactly when it was now, but you approved a $2,000 credit reduction. I believe it was about 8 months ago. And that's on a year-to-year basis that we'll look at. That was in an effort to stimulate new home construction, or to help stimulate new home construction. So that's applied on top of what the fees that are listed within the annexation agreements are.
Okay, so it's part of the
So-
annexation agreement. That's where those fees come in.
Now,
It's
there
not
can be
here.
some, I believe that there can be some adjustments based on village code for tap fees. So for instance, if a tap fee goes, I don't remember exactly what the tap fee is, frankly, but if it's $1,500 and it goes to $1,700, I believe that that can be imposed, but I'd have to check how the annexation agreements are written.
It's in the annexation agreement. I think we'd have to stick to it. Now, some of the annexation agreements had escalator clauses in them.
Right.
Where each year we could increase the fee by a certain percentage.
Okay, I was curious to see how that worked out.
And can you check Bel Marais, just since we were just talking about it, to see if that would impact them? Or if, maybe as long as they're aware that we're talking about this, how that might impact their performance? Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. And so the third item included in the ordinance is language to allow for monthly billing or bi-monthly. We are currently bi-monthly billing. It's a recommendation in the EEI report. We did discuss it slightly at the last meeting in regards to going to monthly billing, or billing every month, I'm sorry. At this point, I can turn it over to Pete, or I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
Well, I have a comment and two questions, but I can wait until Engineer Waller's is through.
So I can go through this pretty quickly. These are slides you've already seen, but what we did is we just consolidated things to show what I thought was the most illustrative slide. And recall, this is our current ordinance right now. It's a 3% annual increase, and the green lines obviously are the cash on hand. The black line is our reserve requirement, and so what we are looking to get here is the green line as close to the black line as possible. And what happens with this alternative is, over time, we lose ground and we can't maintain our cash reserve. So this alternative really doesn't work in the long term. Obviously, it works for a few years, but it starts to go off course here. And remember, one of the reasons why the 3% annual rate's really not working as well is that our water use decline or our water use is declining by about 2.5%. So that's kind of the reason that this doesn't hold up as well as maybe it would if we were in staying steady with our water rate or water usage. This was the 3.5 annual rate increase. This is option 2. This works, pretty well in the out years. It certainly starts to build reserve, but we think that this option definitely works as well. Then the option with the 4% and a 1% increase also keeps us pretty much online. It doesn't build as big of reserves out into the future, but it kind of stays the course, and I think does a pretty good job of matching revenues to expenses, which is really what our goal is. And then the last alternative was to take into account the future alternate water supply cost, which was a fairly healthy cost, to be determined yet, but based on some of the initial work, whether it be a Lake Michigan supply or Fox River supply, there's an allowance in there for about a $45 million capital investment. So that would be out into the future. So the idea is you're building some reserves that can be able to weather the cost of a future alternate supply in the future.
Okay. Can I ask you a question on that one?
Sure,
The, can you go back to that one?
I can.
What year do you anticipate us pulling the trigger on an alternate water supply on this? Because I noticed the cash reserves don't climb like you would expect. But it's built into all of these numbers, is assuming we're going that way at some point.
I just watched the presentation earlier today, and I believe Michelle said it was 2029.
Okay.
Thank you, that sounds right.
Sounds right.
This is the comparison of the 5 rates for the quote-unquote average user in the village. So what the monthly charge would be, depending on, option 1 is the current rate, obviously, and then it compares the other alternatives to that. And then we did just the calculation then, which is the sheet that you have in front of you on the dais as well. But it basically just gets the differential, so you can see like in the difference between option 2 and option 3 and option 4A for fiscal year 2019 to 20, it's 16 cents, 32 cents. 4A, there's no change because it's essentially the same, and then 81 cents for option 5A. So it's just another way of looking at the same numbers that you have. So it's just doing some of the math for you. And then the last slide we have is just the comparative of the communities nearby. And one of the things we touched on at the last meeting is that right now we don't have a sewer rate associated with our fee, but most other communities or some of the other communities do. So, but this is again, that's not to say we don't do sanitary sewer maintenance within our rate, because we do, but we just don't have a specific designated per 1,000 gallon rate for that. So that's all we had for presentation, but I have the other presentation here, and I can bring it up if there are questions specific to that. So you want me to go back to, happy to do that.
So no matter what option we go with, in 5 years, or however the FY '23, however long that is, we're still lower than, at that point, we'll be lower than everybody else is currently. So unless our neighbors start decreasing their rates, we'll still be the most cost-effective rate in 5 years.
Yes.
Could I ask for a point of clarification on the chart we're looking at now? I may have missed the important part. Our beige charts, do they not reflect sewer costs, or is the left and the right side measuring the same water and sewer?
Yeah, so all the, and there was probably some details on this in the last presentation, but some communities have a designated amount that they charge for sanitary sewer per 1,000 gallons.
Which is totally separate from,
Water.
but it's totally separate from what we pay Fox Metro.
Right, exactly, yeah. Fox Metro has so everybody gets a Fox Metro bill if you're in Fox Metro, obviously. But in some communities, they have some additional charges that they put on their bill.
Okay.
For, obviously, for reasons that, that they can tell you, but.
And that could be for like the lift station that we own, right, for maintenance to that?
Sure, it could be any number of the
sewer lines
capital
that we own.
programs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have a $6 charge that we use for sewer maintenance. Sorry, $4?
The base charge for water is $6, and then the base charge for sewer is $4, so.
Right.
Cool.
So it's not that we're not charging for it, it's part of the rate structure, but it's not as obvious as other folks.
To clarify, I think the question is, are these rates that are represented on the right side of this water to water, or do these rates from these comparing communities include that waste figure, or are these strictly water to water?
No, it
Both-
includes the wastewater.
Both the beige and the blue contain water and sewer.
So they are comparable.
Right, we charge a flat fee for sewer, where
They
some of those
charge-
communities in the blue charge a fee per 1,000 gallons.
1,000 gallons.
And none of these include
per-
a Fox Metro bill.
That might have been a little confusing. Jeff's got it right.
Well, it's saying bill comparisons up there, so it's what the individual is getting on their bill.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the bottom line on
I
the,
have
on the
one
bill
other
from the village.
question, kind of on this topic. In the agenda materials, there's a reference to a $15 maintenance fee. And
That's the Boulder Hill fee for,
so that's not citywide, that's.
right, that's strictly the fee
and
for
it's
Boulder
not
Hill for all the water
reflected
main.
in that chart.
These are the in-town rates, so the out-of-town rates are not shown.
So Engineer Wallers, I have a comment. As I mentioned, I did go back and look at the original presentation, and then obviously looked at the discussion from our last meeting. In the presentation, it's showing that the goal was to have the rate selected in July, and I personally am feeling like this is a little bit rushed, particularly with the last meeting, even though I wasn't here. I had read through that and was prepared to be here and couldn't be here. But I was surprised to see the ordinance was prepared with the 5.5. So my question is there a reason why we have to do that rate selection so quickly? Is there some timeline that I'm missing?
There is not a timeline that you are missing. We, originally, when we looked at this, that was the time frame, but obviously with different board members being gone at a couple of these meetings and everything, it's not moving as quickly as we had initially thought. So, I mean,
Which honestly, I'm glad, because again, I feel like it's being a little bit rushed, because the first
Right.
presentation was pretty thorough, and there was a lot of information there.
Yep.
And then the last meeting, like I said, it was there as an ordinance already with the 5.5. And again, I looked back 2 meetings ago, and we never came to any type of consensus of which way we wanted to go.
This was tonight's the third discussion, you guys have had on it. I know some of you weren't at the last meeting. And so I'd instructed staff to go ahead and put it on for first reading, just to give the board the ability to approve it in August, if you've come to a decision, to try and give you the most flexibility, I guess. So this way, if you feel at the meeting in August, you guys are ready, then you can go ahead and approve. And if you're not, then we just, we will push that reading.
Okay.
And my only thing is, we have inertia right now on this. Our engineers' first presentation was in June. I would like to see us choose a course, but ultimately at the pleasure of the board. Stalling it now, I think we would lose that momentum. But they've identified several sources. If we need more information, we can,
Right.
that's our prerogative, so.
Okay, I have 2 more questions for you. Regarding the required reserve, I went back again through the presentation to get a feel for that. It was mentioned that the board had dictated that, basically that amount, that we wanted 25% of the water operation budget expenses. And then there's a seasonal cash flow reserve. So my question is, what does that encompass? And number 2, because it's seasonal, does it change?
so roughly, what you're looking at is the $1.4 million is the 25% reserve that's in the financial policies that the board has previously approved. The seasonal, what you look at is in the summer. Obviously, there's more usage in the summer. People are watering and so forth. And so in the winter time, there is less water usage. Plus, in addition to that, our largest expense in the water fund is in December, and that's bond payments of over $1 million. So you take that in consideration, and if we just had the 1.4 reserve, we'd be down $300,000 in reserve, which that's why that additional amount is reflected.
And we're just estimating, or is that really the goal, is to have $1 million under that designation of the seasonal seasonal, no, I can't find it, the seasonal cash flow reserves. We are just always trying to have that be the goal, that we have 1 million toward that, toward those amounts.
We could adjust it at, during the summer, we could adjust it down. It is to reflect the lower water usage in the winter, fall and winter, and then also the large expenses that are paid out in December.
So the goal is to always have the 25%, regardless of what our revenues
Correct.
do, including our $1 million expense in December. We can't, I guess, based on that policy, you need to make sure we have that 25% always.
Right, to have the 25%, we need to have more than that to be prepared.
So 25% of the water operating budget expenses, which, again, when we had the presentation, those are fairly static, so the 1.4 pretty much stays the same based on what they told us. Okay. My next question, and I really don't know who this would go to. I have some concerns about the increases and our senior population. So I was thinking a lot about that as I was looking at all the water information that I have here. And I feel that we probably should do something. I know we were able to negotiate something when we did our contract with DC Trash to have some type of senior program. And I'm wondering how difficult would that be to put in some kind of senior discount, to build some kind of senior discount into it? All on you now.
Right now, that is not contemplated in the numbers for the rate study. It's certainly something we could look at. It would most likely raise the other rate higher. So, like I said, we can certainly look at it, but
The non-seniors would subsidize the
Right.
program for the
Yeah,
seniors.
because two things with that, I guess. One, yes, we're trying to generate a certain level of revenue. So if you give a discount to one group, then the other group's going to have to pay more to make up because we need to hit that target. The other thing to consider if you're thinking about that is, do you do a senior discount or is it some sort of income-based discount? Because you have other people in situations, a single-parent household or things where you may have seniors that are better off than they are.
Right.
So you're singling out the seniors when there may be other groups that are in the same or worse financial condition that you're now
I'm
hitting
thinking-
harder because you're increasing if it's a senior discount.
I'm just kind of comparing it to the program with DC Trash, because we are assuming that the senior would generate less trash. So I'm assuming a senior would use slightly less water than, say, a family or, younger people.
The good thing is that it's rate-based.
Yeah.
And so that if they use very little water, their bill
that's
is
true.
very small anyway. It's not the flat. One thing, the Boulder Hill $15 a month that we added, I know we talked about, but didn't ultimately do anything for the senior population there, for low income or anything. For that reason then, if I'm, for some reason I get mine reduced to 5 or 0, then everybody else is having to front that investment in our utility, so.
And the
Two parts of our billing are flat, though, and if I'm reading it correctly. We have a minimum, a base charge every month, whether you use no water or not. If I'm in Florida for 3 months and I use no water, I still pay a minimum flat fee, and we're proposing to raise that flat fee.
No,
That's,
the flat fee would stay the same.
I misread that then. It looked like it was going up. The other flat fee, if you will, is the monthly service charge for handling and processing your billing. That has nothing to do with consumption, and neither one of those fees reward people for using less water, which is one of our other goals.
Those are the same. We have one for sewer and one for water. That's the administrative and everything is in that. There's just the two. There's the $6 a month, or, per bill for water and $4 per bill for sewer. Those are the only two flat charges we have.
But
So if you don't use any
what
water.
I'm suggesting is that we take a look at whether that's necessary to maintain the senior population. That is a possible area where we could provide a discount or an incentive not without necessarily punishing anybody else.
Well,
Would,
That still goes into the total amount of revenue we generate, so there would have to be an increase somewhere to make up for that.
Well, that is not persuasive to me.
well, and again, just to clarify, because you both had said it's per bill, $6 and $4, but if we move to the monthly billing,
Yeah.
we're going to cut it in
$3
half.
and $2.
It'll become 3 and 2.
Correct.
So
So
that-
the minimum charge if you use no water is $5 a month.
Correct.
Correct. That is correct.
And the reason we did with the trash, I thought, was because we eliminated the senior bag program.
Right.
That was why we did it, because now if you do leave town for 4 months, you still get a garbage bill whereas with the bag program, you didn't. That was why I thought we did that,
Yes.
was because we were taking something away from them.
Had you concluded your questions?
Yes, thank you.
I have a couple, and they refer to the presentation, the sewer revenue analysis and summary. I don't necessarily expect an answer at the moment, but I would like to explore the questions that I'm about to raise. On page 2, there's a chart of expenses, and I think my observation overall in the report that we've got is that there's a ton of detail on the various parameters of billing, but I'm not seeing very much detail on expenses, year over year, or what category they're going to. Most businesses would try to track their cost of business with their sales of product. So the chart here that I'm looking at on page 2 shows 4 categories of expenses, and yet the next slide shows some other categories of expenses that aren't reflected in the chart, which is described as general rate making. And one of them is a charge for miscellaneous. Now, that may have fallen into operations and maintenance in the first chart, but I would feel better informed if I had some charting on these expenses over time, what they have amounted to and whether there's been any success in containing the cost of operation. So that's my comments for page 2. And I have similar thoughts. I got to find my dog-eared page. Here we go. Page 9, there are projected expenses, and that I looked at kind of carefully because it's consistent with my interest in expenses, but it shows yet another category of expense called transfers. And it's a 7-figure number, so it caught my eye. Is there a way that we could have an explanation of what transfers entails and whether we've been successful in managing those over time?
The transfers, there are certain expenses that are accounted for in the general fund,
Yeah.
but that water, we transfer money to pay for, like there are some salaries, some overhead that happen in the general fund, that's what that transfer is.
I think that's what I'd like to see some detail on, because it's part of our decision-making, I think, with regard to what we're going to charge for water. And I'd love to be able to report and reward successful efforts to reduce our administrative costs and to pass that back to our residents.
Absolutely.
In
Is that
addition,
along the same lines as the calc that you had sent me at asked for last week?
It would be similar. We have more detail that we can
Okay.
certainly share, no problem. We tried to boil this down to a little higher level, but we have that detail. We can furnish it for, prior to the next meeting.
Yeah. And Justin, did you have?
I was going to say, in addition to the transfers as a general fund, there are also transfers that are made to the equipment replacement, vehicle and equipment replacement.
Sure, very
So
good.
that's included in there as well.
Yeah. Well, it would put my mind at ease to see that we help me understand those expense categories. And as I will say one more time, we've had some wonderful success in other areas of the village operations of pushing down expenses because we've paid more attention to them. And I think this is an area where we might see a similar benefit if we put our mind to it.
And I'm hoping what we see when we see the data is that there is a similar benefit, or that, you know, that we're doing those things. That's my hope, but that's some good data to have. And your question along the lines of senior or low income, if you can kind of back of the napkin talk about or run some sort of a calc as to what that would look like for others, just so we have that information. I think it's good information to have. I know that's more detailed than what I'm making it sound a lot easier than what I just said. But I'm thinking that we'd be able to do that.
There was no rush for
And-
that, just before breakfast tomorrow.
Yeah, anytime before you go tonight. The other thing would be too, is if anybody else does that for water. The one thing that I was looking up today at the office was your Comcast bill. So I was looking up online, Comcast bills went up 4% last year, and they saw like an 18% jump in profit in the company. So we don't have profit built into this. You know, we're providing this utility. These are not taxes. This is a fee for the water that we're producing. And so whatever the actual rate that we need to fund our water system, that's the one that we need to go with, I think. Our engineers have highlighted a few that don't work and a few that do work. I think it's incumbent upon us to pick a rate that plans for the future. We do have the option of doing nothing, which the state of Illinois has been very good at over a number of years with many things and roads. But I think it's our responsibility here to pass something so that we're planning for the future. And if the future of our water supply was not in jeopardy, some of these other options would make a lot more sense. But having to plan for a switch over the next couple of decades, I think, is what triggers this option 5A. So.
And this is, the goal here is to raise the capital so that when 2029, I think it was, comes, we're not making a 50% increase in our rate, because
Right.
we've banked some of this money. So that brings me, and Trustee Bond and I had a conversation earlier today about it, is do we have a plan for where those funds are going so that they're protected for that? Like we did with our roads program. We wrote an ordinance that said, these funds can only be used for X.
A lockbox, if you will.
Yes, because again, as we've seen in the state, and I don't want to be guilty of that, is
Yeah.
it becomes way too easy to say, oh, well, we have a piggy bank with a cork in the bottom. We can take it
Yeah.
out and shake it and take what we need. And I want to ensure the residents that that's not the intention, and we plan on doing this for the betterment of the future. Can we do that? Do we have the ability as a board to do that? To
Well, I
lock
think
it
our
up?
auditor would kind of take issue with us doing that for other purposes, I would hope.
Actually, the water ordinance does require an annual audit by a third party of the water rates, and so they would certainly look at it as part of the audit.
Wonder why we're pulling stuff out for,
Well, but I'd like to see us be able to do something where we clearly state to the residents, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and we can't touch it. We can't use it until it's being used for X, Y, Z. I just think that it's going to be an easier explanation to residents, because I think people understand that the state has not done appropriate things, and we want to do the right thing.
yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? Doug?
No,
Steve?
no.
Okay, so we'll have this on. If you can get that information, I know we're not meeting for a while. Let's put this on. It was first reading tonight. Should we put it on for second reading, and we'll take action if we want to? If we're ready, if we're not, we don't have to take action, or do you want it first reading again?
If it comes back as second reading, we basically have to vote on it as it is, right? And approve it. So if we didn't want the 5.5, we
We've
wanted
made
the 4.
No, we've made changes
We can make changes?
at the meeting.
There are, and I defer to Attorney Julian, but we have made changes to resolutions or ordinance that have been in front of the board, added particular sections or what have you. So if the board so chose, we could put different numbers in based upon what you approve.
With that,
Motion to approve.
We could do
with-
it on the fly type of thing, okay.
Yes, you would just make
Okay.
that part of your motion, whatever your changes were.
with that, the best option is for us to end up with an ordinance that we know that we would want to support. So if you know of an option that you absolutely want to go with, share that with staff so we can kind of plan accordingly, just so we don't have typos at the last minute, so.
Someone remind me who was at the last meeting, so either Matt or Doug, why we weren't looking at option 3. Because as I look at that, it shows it's the average monthly bill is the least of all of the options. But it seems like, and forgive me, I don't have the slides in front of me anymore. Does that get us to our goal?
Sort of.
1, 2, and 3 don't get us to our goal if we're looking at the future water supply.
Okay.
I think 5A was the only one that took that into account, was the
Oh, I see it, okay.
future, was the only one that took into account.
4 and.
4 and 5A,
Yeah.
okay. 4A and 5A, okay. Thank you, that explains that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Did you get your answer about whether you wanted it as a second reading or a first reading? Did we answer that?
Yeah.
I was going to
Okay.
put it as second reading.
Second reading, and we can adjust, okay.
All right, so item B this evening, we have ordinance 1819, providing for the regulation of small wireless facilities. This is waiver first and passage on the second, and I'll ask our attorney for summary.
Sure. This is the long-awaited small cell wireless ordinance, and as I'm sure you all know, this has been bouncing around at the state level for quite some time. There's a lot of pushback initially, and finally, the law was passed June 1st with a 60-day implementation period for municipalities. If they want to regulate small cell wireless facilities in their right-of-way, the state law says already what you can do. You just adopt an ordinance, basically adopting the state law provision saying what municipalities can do. So just some highlights of what this addresses is the application process and timing. So there's certain statutory timeframes for if a small cell wireless provider submits an application, how long the village will have to say if the application is complete or not, how long they have to make comments. If nothing happens, then it's deemed approved, and this is all statutory, so it's really imperative that staff understands this, and that's, we prepared a memo of all the steps that must take if you get one of these applications. But again, there's just certain time parameters that the state law outlines. There's placement requirements. There's different processes if a wireless provider wants to install a new pole versus co-locating, and what discretion a municipality has to try to ask for a co-location first rather than a new pole. There's parameters in there. That if similar service can be provided by a co-location, if there's, certain things within a certain distance. So those very specific parameters are set forth in the law and in the ordinance as well. The state law does set the fees, which is a $1,000 application fee for new poles, a $650 application fee for a single co-location, and a $350 for each co-location if there's more than one co-location being proposed, as well as the municipality's ability to charge $200 per year per co-located antenna. So those are all things that there was back and forth about whether or not the municipality could create the rates, and the state ultimately said these are what the rates are. If a municipality does want to charge them, they have to adopt the ordinance with these provisions in it. Otherwise, a small wireless antenna provider can basically come in and place wherever they want without very much municipal overview at all. So it's in the village's best interest to adopt, at least a little bit that we've gotten. And I think there's still going to be continued to be pushback at the state level as this is implemented and as everyone sees how it works out. So this might not be the end of it, but for now, this is what it is. So that's why we recommended waiver of the first passage on the second, because it really is just what the state statute already is and what they say that we have to do if we want to be able to charge these fees.
So this is something that we fought through Metro West and the IML for a couple of cycles now. That is the state jumping in and telling us how to regulate, which seems interesting. Like, would they do it for building permits or for liquor licenses? I mean, it seems like a slippery slope that way. So I'm not very happy to be passing this after we fought against it for so long. But reality is this is the very small amount that we can do with the state passing this bill.
It seems like some of the fees help minimize it being a good option for the cell service. You know, they want to come and put 30 of these in town. It's a little juicy, dollar-wise, for them with the $1,000 per application and the additional fees annually. So, I mean, I feel like the state may have put a little teeth in it at least to make it not just a blanket where they can come and put them wherever they want. With no, you know, because again, the original there was no locations, there was nothing.
Right.
There was no regulation at all. They could just come in and put one in front of my house.
Well, that's where you started seeing municipalities that were adopting ordinances that would have really, really high rates, and then the companies were pushing back, saying, you know, those rates aren't fair. So this was kind of the middle ground, and as President Rowley mentioned, there's a lot of negotiation and a lot of pushback, and a lot of communities still are not happy with this, but it is something, and something is better than nothing, and we'll see where it goes.
The Kane County Chronicle did an article on this just a few days ago, really. And one of our neighboring communities along the Fox River was quoted as saying this concept is a disaster. But sadly, the article didn't explore what kind of disaster they were describing. And that may not be a reason to vote against this, but I just wondered if you had any insight on why it might be referred to as a disaster.
Sure. I believe that most of the communities that pushed back about this were concerned about just the fact that the state is very heavily telling a municipality what it can and cannot do in its right-of-way, where typically the discussion over the right-of-way has been strictly a local level issue. So this has taken something that's usually looked at the local level and given the state significant authority over. So I think that that's really where the biggest pushback has been.
I share that view as well, so, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Second? I'm sorry, Teresa.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries 4-0. Thank you. Moving on, we have ordinance 1818 authorizing execution and adoption of a cable television franchise renewal agreement with Comcast of Illinois. This is first reading, so we won't vote on it tonight. With that, I will ask our attorney to summarize. Thank
Sure.
you.
This is just a standard renewal of the franchise agreement. It's substantially similar to what the prior franchise agreement was. It looks a little different because things were taken out of order, but substantively, most of it's the same with a couple updates for things that have changed at the federal and state level. It's also consistent with the MetroNet agreement. And again, because cable is heavily regulated, both federally and statewide, there's not a whole lot of changes that we had other than just making sure that the village had its ability, in permitting and in anything that might come through the public works end, to make sure they're abiding by village standards insofar as that goes. But otherwise, the agreements are pretty similar year upon year. Next meeting, there will be a public hearing, which is required as part of the process. So there'll be an opportunity for any comments or any further discussion there. And then we're still working out a couple of the details. This agreement has been reviewed by their council as well as us, and we're pretty much on the same page, but there might be a couple minor language tweaks, which we'll highlight at the next meeting, anything that changes from this version.
Is there, I think there was a reference to quality of service or continuous service that referenced another document, but I have two questions. Do we have any discretion with regard to the quality of service or any defining a period of acceptable disruption of service?
I would have to double check. I believe most of that is defined by state or federal statute. I can get the language for you, though.
I think you're right, and it would be, to me at least, helpful to have that document literally attached to this one, so it's clear to everybody over time what the quality of service requirements really are.
Sure, I'll find that specific provision for you.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, this is first reading. We'll pass this at a future meeting or vote on it. Item D, we have a PSA with EEI for design engineering for the 2019 MFT and infrastructure road program. I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director, Rick Radke. Or?
He can cover it if he wants.
You know, this is a follow-up from our last meeting where we approved the modified program for 2019. So this is the design engineering services contract that follows that recommendation for the program so that we can start doing the plans and specs for the next road program and again, get it out an early bid. So it's really, again, following along the recommendation from the pavement program update that was agreed to by the board.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions or comments? It's been really very successful to jump on this a year early. I know that was something we'd pushed for, and it's been really beneficial.
And these will actually be constructed in,
Calendar year 2019, so it'd be next year's spring program, you know, starting in May.
okay.
Any comments or questions? Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak. Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Carries 4-0. Thank you. The next one is a PSA. This is item E, PSA for master task order within Engineering Enterprises.
So
Go ahead.
there's been a change in policy from the state of Illinois for using federal transportation dollars. And they now require that for every project that has more than $25,000 in federal funds, you have to go through a QBS selection process and decide who the most qualified is to do the plan. So what has prompted this activity is the Auket Road project, which we're moving forward on. And we need to submit a draft engineering agreement to the state for review, and then it comes back to the board for approval. So that's kind of what prompted this activity. So in order that we don't have to go through a QBS process for every federally funded project, we thought it would be more efficient to do what's called a master task order. It's kind of similar to the agreement that we have with Lane Western, which allows processing individual task orders for specific projects. It doesn't preclude you from using another firm. Let's say there was a more complicated item that came up, you could certainly do another request for qualifications for that element. But it does simplify our ability to manage federal funding for projects in the future. So this task order would be, or this master agreement would be for 5 years. The village did follow the process that was outlined by Illinois Department of Transportation. We advertised, we accepted proposals. There was a team of individuals, it was Jeff and Justin, that did the review of the proposals, went through the matrix to score them, and selected EEI. So it followed the process, you know, to the letter. So at this time, what we're asking for is passage of the master task order, which doesn't involve any dollar amount. It just authorizes the village to be able to use our firm in the future when we have federally funded projects. The first one, though, will be the Auket Road LAFO, the local agency functional overlay. That'll come to you. So that'll be the first practical use of the master agreement. But so for tonight, it's just passage of the master task order agreement, and there's no dollar amount associated with it. So I hope that wasn't too confusing, but that's
It's not.
where we're at.
So this doesn't bind the village from only using EEI for every federal project. We would still have that option, just like we do now. And just for the sake of stating this, you weren't involved with the review and the recommendation. I know you gave the presentation tonight, but you weren't in any way involved with that, so.
Correct.
I just feel like it's good to state that for the record.
Right. Normally, this would be coming from the Director of Public Works, but because of the timing,
Yeah.
it fell in between before he was selected, and, you know, that's the, kind of the conundrum here, but, right.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Anything else from staff on that one? Okay.
Need a motion to approve?
Yes, please.
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak. Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. And Trustee Youngerman.
That carries 4-0. Thank you all. All right, item F this evening is sidewalk and bike path gap installation plan, kind of an update mid-year. That'll ask Engineer Wallers to summarize this one.
So the village board approved the 5-year plan for the gap installation for the bike multi-use path and on the sidewalks. And so we had began work on the 2018 improvement, which included the bike path that goes through Stewart Sports Complex and some work on Griffin Drive area. As we were, thank you, that's the one. So as we were getting into this, we had to get another easement from Commonwealth Edison.
Which is
and-
always fun.
Which was actually pretty routine for this. But the and Fox Valley Park District, the complicating thing is that the farmer that, the agricultural tenant who farms the property has a lease that we would also have to get release from. And right now, the Fox Valley Park District is working with that farmer to try to get the release, to negotiate, you know, crop damage, you know, timing, those sort of things. We're not confident that we're gonna get that in time to be able to construct the bike path, this section of the bike path this year. So what we're asking for is if we, and because we don't have a meeting, the first meeting in August, we wanted to put this on this agenda to discuss it. So one alternative is we just stay the course and construct it as soon as we get the agricultural tenant to give us a release, whether it's this year, late fall, or next year, whatever it might be. The other alternative would be to give us the option to move to the 2019 program, which was 2 sections, on one on some bike path on Caterpillar Drive, and then the other bike path that goes through the Commonwealth Edison on Willoway and Thunder Gulch Road in that area, as shown. And we would make that determination based on the final drop dead date where we needed to, you know, get out to bid so that we could construct the path. So whether we do it, the 2019 program this year or in 2019 would depend on whether or not we get the releases we need from Fox Valley Park District's farming tenant and and it happens to be the same one that farms the Commonwealth Edison property. So it's kind of either or. So that's where we're at. So we just wanted to be proactive because we weren't 100% certain we were going to get the releases we need in a timely fashion to construct it this year, so.
Do you eventually assume that you're going to get the releases from the farmer?
We do, because those leases have to be renewed. And so the worst-case scenario is when they go to renew their lease, that they would include in their provision for us to get an easement. So, but we're hoping to do it, obviously, before that.
How often do they need to renew their lease? Yearly?
It depends, and as I'm sitting here, I can't tell you. I think the Commonwealth Edison lease is different than Fox Valley Park District. I can find out, but I don't remember.
I think for the Fox Valley Park District, I believe it's every 2 years. So I think it comes up at the end of this farming season.
And it's something that the Park District is supportive of and working towards. So
Right.
I don't see any issue really flipping it, so we don't waste a whole construction season waiting for
Yeah, I
that
think
sign
it's
off.
really proactive to come up with the alternate. I think it showed there was like a $5,000
Right. It's
addition.
It's nominally the same cost for the 19 program. We still plan to do the improvements on Griffin Road and that part of it, so we would still do that. But we would substitute then the 2019 for the section through the Park District, so.
And you have enough time to, I mean, obviously, when do you have to make your decision to pull
Well,
the trigger?
that's the problem. We've really
coming
got
up
to make the
quickly.
decision August 1st, and
Okay.
so we're running out of time. Yeah.
So we're pretty much going the other way.
Essentially now, yeah.
Yeah.
So is there any objection to flipping that around?
No.
Well, obviously, get the bids to approve, when that time comes, but at least the engineers can kind of move forward.
Right, and if it's all possible, we'll certainly complete the 2018 program as originally approved by the board, but if we can't, we'll move to Plan B.
Mhm. Okay. We don't
Make a
need to vote on
motion.
that. Do we need to vote
Do
on
we
that?
vote on that? No.
Okay,
Consensus, we're good.
cool. Yeah, you can flip the page. All right, thanks, Pete. Last item for separate action is the Montgomery in Motion street painting request. Who wants this one?
Oh, certainly.
So the Rotary Club of Montgomery is once again sponsoring the street painting for the Montgomery in Motion logo on River Street, and we would respectfully request permission to repaint the logo again this year. And we plan to do the painting on July 28th. It's a Saturday from 8 to noon, and then our backup rain date is August 4th. Which is the next Saturday. So everyone is certainly welcome to come out and help. It's actually pretty fun to do, and we're usually done by noon. Public Works is kind enough to block off the street for us, and then all of the materials are paid for by the Rotary Club, and it's volunteer labor, so that's where we're at.
Awesome. And what was the first date that you said?
July 28th, so
Okay.
it's coming up Saturday.
Engineer Wallers, who controls the timing on painting the do not pass stripes on that stretch of road?
That would be the village.
So we have complete control over that then?
Yeah, actually, we just got confirmation today that tomorrow, Form's going to be coming in. We went to the board a few weeks ago on getting that contract lined up. So tomorrow, we're going to start a lot of the handwork, doing murals and things like that. But yeah, downtown is one of our #1 areas.
So that could be done before the logo is refurbished? Perfect.
Will they stop and not paint over the logo?
Please.
So that we don't have to try to cover their bright yellow?
We get in there first, so then when they paint over it, we're fine.
Or
And
they'll
they would,
just-
hold on, and they would go over the logo then? Oh,
They would get the
Oh.
yellow stripes in, so you're not gonna take the yellow stripes around the logo? I'm just kidding. Awesome. All right, I'm not hearing any objection to move forward with that, and,
No.
thank you.
thank you to the Rotary for that. I think it's a great thing.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we don't have any items for discussion, anything new or unfinished? Teresa?
I do have one item. The Montgomery Rotary Club did our first cleanup on Adopt a Highway, or under the Adopt a Highway program. Oh, that was at the end of June. We were out there. It was pretty hot. We cleaned up a lot more than I ever thought we would get done. We were out there 2 hours, and we got the section from Orchard East to right about the entrance to Walmart, right in that area. So we got a good chunk of it done, but that was our first round out there, so
Awesome,
it went really well.
good work.
Oh, and thank you to the police department. They parked a squad out there for us to hopefully slow some of the traffic down, so we appreciate that too.
I have an item. Some of the residents of Bryan Lane have reached out to me to ask when construction's supposed to start.
We are still waiting for the final easement document. We've gotten sign off from all 9 of the review groups inside of ComEd, and we've had email communication indicating that The document's supposed to be forthcoming, I just don't have it in my hand. As soon as we get that and execute it, then we would direct the contractor to get started.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Future meetings, our next village board meeting will be Monday, August 27th, in this room. With that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss collective negotiating matters.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll call the meeting back to order. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.